You're live.
Welcome, welcome. You listen to 360 Info. I'm your host, Hamtonio. To manipulate history is to manipulate consciousness. And to manipulate consciousness is to manipulate power. And to manipulate power is to manipulate possibilities. Welcome, welcome to the show. Got a great show for you today. Yes, Cleveland, we're here. We're here to do our best in disseminating good information to you guys. And that's what we do. And we would love for you guys to keep joining us and to visit our channels, The Journey with Antonio and Vince Robinson's YouTube channel. So take the time to subscribe and so because we can keep disseminating this good information to you. Got a great show for you today. But before I introduce our guest, we got our good brother in the remote studio. What's up, brother Vince?
Yes, sir. Again, glad to be here with you. And just want to let you know that I'll be doing a show which is Unmasked, Navigating a New World Order at Larchmere Arts next Sunday at 7 p.m. I'll post information in the description for this video and you can join us. Also want to encourage those of you who are listening to us on the radio and watching us on YouTube and Facebook to subscribe to our channels. And with that, we'll get this conversation started. Today, we have with us Dr. Umar Johnson, no stranger to 360 Info Network. He's in Ypsilanti, Michigan at this point, and he is part of a conference, a two-day conference that's taking place at Eastern Michigan University. So we're really pleased and grateful that he's able to spend this time with us today, and we'd like to welcome him to 360 Info Network. One of the reasons that I invited Dr. Johnson to join us today is because he's kind of been on top of the current political situation here in America. And I just wanted to be able to offer some different views about this Democrat-Republican paradigm that we find ourselves in today. You know, we are in a place once again where we have to choose between the lesser of two evils. And this is pushing us towards an alliance with a party that has not really served the needs fully of Black people in America, but we blindly give our allegiance to this party because we think that it's our only choice. So we're going to talk about some of the choices that we have and just basically get Brother Umar's take on where we are right now. So with that, just want to have you reflect on the goings on of the past week. You know, if you blink, you miss a lot because there's so much going on. But in the past few weeks, we've seen an assassination attempt on a former president of the United States. We've seen the Democrat candidate drop out of the race. We've seen the vice president elevated to the position of candidate. And as it appears that she has the support that she needs within the party to be declared the candidate for this election in November. So I just wanted to get your take on the current situation and where Black folks find themselves in this paradigm.
Yes, sir. And good morning to you, Brother Hamtonio and Brother Vince. And good morning to our Cleveland African family and our African family across the good state of Ohio. And of course, here, our Michigan family, where I am, as you said, Ypsilanti for Eastern Michigan University's Black Consciousness Conference. And for my Cleveland family, you know, Cleveland is only a 3-hour drive from Ypsilanti, Michigan. So if any of you want to come on out today, feel free to hit the road and come on up. It's a free event. You don't need to register. Just show up. And we will be at Eastern Michigan University in the Honors College from 3 p.m. until 7 p.m. talking Black consciousness, Black politics, and the Black agenda. And that's 3 to 7 today, Saturday, August the 3rd. When I look at what's happening right now with the political landscape, you know, and of course we know that the president of the United States isn't the ultimate decision maker in this country. The president is the face of the system. The president does not create nor control the system. When we look at the shadow government, which includes, but is not limited to, the National Security Agency, the FBI, the CIA, the Bilderbergs, the Rothschilds, the Trilaterals, the Federal Reserve, if I didn't say that already. When we look at the shadow government, I personally believe that they originally wanted Joe Biden to do a second term. Biden is completely in alignment with the agenda of the power structure, and he's a career politician. He knows how things need to be done. However, because of his declining, or what appears to be his declining intellectual capacity, I think the power structure decided in the 11th hour, which is something we don't see a whole lot, to have him step down and replaced by Kamala. I want to be clear. It is not my contention that he stepped down because of pressure from Democrats and President Obama. He stepped down because he was told to step down. And I wouldn't even be surprised to find out if that decision had already been made prior to President Biden making that move. Now, as far as Kamala Harris ascending to the Democratic Party's presidential nomination, I believe the reason they decided to go with her, both the visible government and the unseen government, I believe the reason they decided to go with Kamala Harris is because she's a woman. And at the last election, there were 10 million more women registered to vote in America than men. That's across race, that's across class. And because there's 10 million more American women registered to vote, irrespective of race, than men, the Democratic Party and the power structure believes that Kamala Harris might just be strong enough to bring those 10 million female votes over to the Democratic Party. That's what they're banking on. They're banking on that those women, most of whom are white and Latino, they're banking that they would much rather see a brown lady in the White House than a white man. Now, with that being said, I'm disappointed in us as a race, as American African people, because there have been 14 presidential elections since Dr. King's assassination. 14. And for 14 presidential election cycles, Black America continues to carry on business as usual. And what I mean by that primarily is the three mistakes that we make. Number one, we don't organize. In a democracy, the minority loses. You are at the will of the majority. Therefore, for our voice to be heard, our votes have to be counted together. We have to lock those Black votes into one vote. We have to vote as a single body, not as a bunch of schizophrenic individuals running off with their own passionate personal agendas. Until we vote as a team, our vote will never matter. So that's number one. The Black vote is still disorganized. Number two, we are not using our numerical strength and our financial strength to demand an audience with Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, so we can talk about the Black agenda and find out which items on that agenda they are willing to concede in exchange for both money and votes. We never use our money effectively. We never use our votes effectively. And the third point that I wanted to say is, I think it is an insult for these presidential candidates, rather than have a conversation with us, rather than talk about our issues and concerns, they simply bring out Black celebrities to entertain us in exchange for a vote. That is extremely disrespectful. Could you imagine Kamala Harris going to the Chinese community and rolling out a bunch of Chinese rappers in order to get the Chinese vote, or going to the East Indian community and rolling out a bunch of East Indian rappers to get the East Indian vote? She would never get their vote if she tried to entertain them into voting for her. And that's exactly what she's doing with us and Donald Trump as well, you know, with Amber Rose and Hulk Hogan and so forth. They want to entertain Black people into voting for them. But when they go to other constituent groups, they actually sit down, negotiate, they talk, they debate, and they reason on how their presidency can help that community. With Black folk, there's never any conversation, only entertainment.
Well, you know, I find it interesting that every 4 years we come back to the same point, and that is realizing that our presence within the party is taken for granted. And when do we get to a point where we exercise leverage from the massive voting bloc that we provide to the party? President Obama would not have been elected had it not been for the Black vote. In a state like Ohio, which is a Republican state, but you have these high concentrations of Black people in the urban areas, and that high concentration is what delivered the state to Obama back then. When you talk about Kamala, the whole idea that she's Black, she's not Black, all these divisions that we come up with in our race leads us back to the same point. We can't completely give our support to her because of the division that exists within the race. So again, we don't have enough unity within the party to say, hey, if we don't get our needs met, if we don't get our concerns listened to, we're not going to participate in this. And then we have third party candidates such as Marion Williamson and Dr. Cornel West and Robert Kennedy, some of whom are speaking to the issues, but don't have a place in the conversation because they're not invited to the party. I mean, Brother Umar, can you imagine a debate where you have former President 45, you have Kamala Harris, and then you have Robert Kennedy on the same stage talking about the issues or not talking about the issues as they do? What can we do to increase the leverage that we have as a voting bloc within this political system?
Get organized. The eternal weakness of the American African people, at least in the post-Dr. King era, has been disorganization. The most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey said the greatest weapon used against the Negro is disorganization. Stokely Carmichael Kwame Ture said, if you organize a little, you get a little done. If you organize sometimes, you get some things done. But if you don't organize at all, you don't get anything done. You know, back in 1968, a few months before the government executed Dr. King, the Kerner Commission was released by Lyndon Baines Johnson, own presidentially appointed a team of researchers. And that Kerner Commission, which I think every American African should read, get your hands on a copy. There's been a new brief copy of it recently released. I saw it in Barnes & Noble in Wilmington, Delaware last week. And there were three main recommendations that the Kerner Commission put out. They put out more than three, but the three main recommendations that they put out, this was 57 years ago. 57 years ago, the Kerner Commission told President Lyndon Baines Johnson that if you want to fix the ghetto, number one, you got to give them jobs, better jobs, quality jobs, livable wage jobs. They need industry, okay? And then he said you have to fix the schools. The schools are contributing to the impoverishment of the Black community and the dysfunction because they're not putting out better educated African-American youth. And then the third thing he said was justice. Black people need justice. The Kerner Commission said the main reason for the riots of 1967, and of course, Newark, New Jersey and Detroit, Michigan led the way with probably the two most revolutionary riots during that year. And that was the reason the Kerner Commission was put together to investigate the causes of the 67 riots. And they said the riots came because of justice. Black people's voices are not heard. The criminal justice system is oppressive. You know, when they're mistreated and disrespected by Caucasians, there's really no due process for African Americans. And so better jobs, better schools, and better justice. Here we are 57 years later. And guess what? Those are still three of the biggest problems we have in the Black community. Mass unemployment. Half the Black men in most urban cities are unemployed or underemployed. The school systems absolutely stink. They're one of the biggest recruiting agencies for the mass incarceration system. And when we talk about criminal justice, I mean, just the fact that 95% of Black people in prison are not there because they were convicted of a crime or that they had committed a crime, but because they simply can't afford decent, legal, adequate representation. Jobs, schools, and justice. When is Vice President Harris and former President Trump going to address those three issues?
I'm glad you brought that up. And I also wanted to follow up on the idea that the women's vote is so important right now. 4 years ago, when Hillary Clinton was running against 45, the election was lost. And it was partly because there were white women, despite the fact that they were looking at now a convicted rapist being the president of the United States, and all of the indiscretions that involved members of the opposite sex. There were many white women who did not vote for Hillary Clinton. In your opinion, what has changed that would perhaps sway women voters who weren't willing to vote for a woman to vote for a Black woman?
I think here, for me, and I'm still wrestling with my decision on this, or should I say my prediction, will white women go with the brown woman over the white man? They went with the white man over the white woman. Will they again go with the white woman over the brown woman? And it's a tough decision only because you have more women of color in America now than you did then. And so there is a possibility that they might side with Kamala. But if I had to make a call at this moment, I think they would still much rather have Trump. But a good indicator as to who the government really wants in that office is to who does the mainstream media pander. And it appears that the mainstream media is pandering more to Kamala Harris than Donald Trump. And that's why I still believe that the power structure wants Kamala. See, the significance of the popular vote in a world where democracy doesn't really exist, where presidents are selected before they are elected, the significance of the popular vote is that the power structure doesn't like to go against the wishes of the people, because it begins to reveal the hypocrisy of the so-called democracy. And so they like the media to manipulate us into choosing a person that they pre-selected. The pre-selection is Kamala. But the issue is Donald Trump is much more popular than the media is trying to let on to. And I'm not sure that Kamala is as popular as they are promoting her to be. It's going to be tough, because with America being increasingly Latino, they might want to lean more to the brown woman than the white man. It's going to be tough, but I still believe that the shadow government's choice is Kamala Harris, although I think most white Americans will line up with Donald Trump.
Well, you know, it's interesting. When you look at the election of Barack Obama as president, it seemed as though he just came out of nowhere. I mean, a lot of Americans hadn't heard of him. The difference now is a lot of people have heard of Kamala Harris just based on her track record, but it's kind of a similar scenario. We have a biracial parentage situation. We have questions about the authenticity of citizenship as a result of that. It's really an interesting place that we find ourselves in, and I just wonder how the public is going to dissect all this information so that they can make a choice. And then the other thing that really concerns me is the fact that, as you pointed out, there are groups like the Bilderbergs. We didn't mention the World Economic Forum, but all of these major think tanks have a globalist agenda. And the Democrat Party, because President Biden was basically in bed with the globalists, they want to advance this. So they see this, from my perspective, as an opportunity to carry forth the globalist agenda. On the other hand, you have the former President 45, who lines up with a nationalist agenda. And the agenda of the globalists is to have control. So they put us in this position where we have to choose between a globalist and a nationalist. And because we've been indoctrinated the way we have, we go with the globalist, and then they get their wishes when it comes to the election. It's no secret that the powers that be supply money to both sides of the election. They give money to the Republicans. They give money to the Democrats. You know, we say this all the time. Bird has two wings, a left wing and a right wing, but it's both the same bird. So whether it's 45, whether it's Harris or whoever is chosen to be in that position, the folks who are pulling the strings are going to get their way. But we're also seeing a paradigm shift right now with respect to the world economy. And that is based on the blockchain, based on cryptocurrencies, and based on the central bank digital currencies that the globalists want to enforce, so that they can have complete power and control over the way people spend their money. I know we didn't talk about this before this interview, but I'm just curious about your awareness of the blockchain, decentralized finance, and how that might be a tool of empowerment for people in the diaspora, Africans in the diaspora, and on the continent of Africa.
I think it's a gift and a curse. On the one hand, it does give us the opportunity to build economically and to engage in trade with each other, you know, through a medium that is not controlled by the European power structure. At the same time, because of that reason, it opens itself up for scamish type of behavior to take place. You know, it opens up itself for the possibility, you know, of the value of that currency, you know, dropping significantly and exponentially within days. You know, so I see the benefits, but I also see the risk of a decentralized market. And I think also, as African people around the world, we also need to recognize as well that this digital currency, whether it be crypto or otherwise, is a significant threat to African people, in that we will never be able again to do anything off the grid financially once the world goes completely to a digital currency. So right now we still have dollar bills in our pocket, but eventually we won't have dollar bills in our pocket. All transactions will be done through computer chip, will be done through debit card, will be done through online transaction. When we get to that point, there will never, ever again be able to be a grassroots rebellion, a grassroots movement that the power structure cannot oversee and ultimately sabotage, because they control our access to the World Wide Web. They can hit one button and shut the whole thing down. So there may never, ever again be a Black Panther Party, a Marcus Garvey movement type of a situation, independence revolutions in Africa, because if the only way you can finance your revolution is through online transactions controlled by an internet that's surveilled by the power structure, how are we actually going to fund the revolution? We won't be able to. So I look at this one world currency and this digital currency in particular as one of the final death blows that are going to be dealt to organic grassroots revolutions around the world.
Well, I think that there is space within the decentralized finance paradigm for empowerment, and it goes with tokenization of assets. It goes with tokenizing intellectual property in a way that protects the people who create those things. So I think what needs to happen is cultivation of greater awareness about the benefit of decentralized finance. And then the other part, what you mentioned about going off grid, or, you know, the fact that the power goes out, you can't use the computers and so forth and so on, is precious metals. This is a time for us to invest in gold and silver. Silver is a limited commodity. There's a finite supply of it, and the price of it has been suppressed historically. But, you know, once the world runs out of silver, it's going to go up exponentially in price to a greater extent than gold. So I think it behooves us to invest both in gold and silver, so you can have a digital wallet, you can have complete control of your digital assets. But as you said, when the power goes down, you can't use those, but you will have an alternative. Have you had any conversations with brothers and sisters on the continent who are dealing with decentralized finance and any awareness of the value of precious metals in terms of being able to support our financial needs?
I have. In fact, earlier this year, I was in Belgium, Brussels, Belgium, with a good friend of mine, who fellow Pan-Africanist, and he's very much into the crypto, you know, and me and him have been having conversations about this crypto situation. And again, you know, he's very much into it. He does see the pros as well as the cons. I'm probably a little bit more skeptical than he is. Also, some brothers and sisters here in the States and a few in Africa as well. You know, so I think what my next step is going to be is to bring them all together, you know, and have a conversation to see how we can use this, you know, as a source of funding, you know, for the various projects and institutions and initiatives that we need to carry on to try to get our people, you know, out of the situation that, you know, that we are in. So I'm currently studying it. I got some really good people who are into it. I'm still skeptical, but I am going to proceed with caution, because, as you said, it's definitely something that, you know, we need to look into. And given the situation that we're in as African people, domestically and internationally, we have to consider all options at our disposal.
Well, you know, when you look at the major players in the game, and I'm speaking of the Black Rocks and the Fidelities and other companies, 3 or 4 years ago, they were anti-crypto. But that has changed. You know, Larry Fink sits on top of over $10 trillion in assets. And he finally began to see the benefit of dealing with the blockchain and decentralized finance. But the quandary is that when you have one company that controls a major portion of currency supply, then it's no longer decentralized, it's centralized. Globalists
Absolutely.
want to move towards centralization of currency. But if Bitcoin is good enough for BlackRock and Larry Fink, Bitcoin is good enough for everyday people who can buy a small portion of it, not necessarily an entire coin, which might be, you know, $65,000, $70,000 right now, but you can buy increments of it. And again, with Bitcoin, there's a finite supply. They're only going to mint 21 million coins, and that's it. Bitcoin is the antithesis of fiat currency. And the fiat currency is what has America in the pickle that it's in, because their answer to the solution is to create more debt. And the deeper they go in debt, the greater the price tag for the American public. So I learned something earlier this week that was quite interesting, and that is the fact that America, the government of America, actually owns Bitcoin. And they're entertaining the possibility of Bitcoin being a world reserve currency, or at least a reserve currency. You have something that is backed by a commodity. Bitcoin has been classified as a commodity by the Securities and Exchange Commission, and as a result, it's not subject to regulation by the SEC as other things might be. So again, this is something that we definitely need to have a greater awareness of, so that we can leverage our ability to channel the 2 trillion that we generate every year into something that's tangible, and not keep investing in something that loses value as they print more and more and more, or create more and more. Because the other fact is that most of the money in circulation is not physical. It's just digital information in a ledger system. So what you have with the blockchain is a digital ledger system, and you have the United States and their Federal Reserve and all of that. It's the same thing. It's a digital ledger system, but it's a centralized ledger system.
I'm with you.
Okay. So just wanted to switch gears a little bit. I know we might be all over the place today, and that's okay. But I wanted to talk to you about what happened in Senegal. We spoke briefly before the show started about the fact that it appears that the young leadership that took, I want to say, control, but the Europeans are controlling things there, whether we want to admit it or not. But there were some relatively young leaders who took power in Senegal, but it seems as though that quote unquote revolution has fallen apart. What can you tell us about what you know about what's going on in Senegal right now?
And I got a couple of friends over there, and I'm kind of getting mixed information. Some people do support, the leadership that appears now, to have foundered. Other people believe that it was just reactionary with no, true vision for the community. For me, and I took the same position when the situation happened in the Sahel, several months ago, when Ibrahim Traoré and the other brothers of Mali and Niger came together. My thing is, I have to be slow to react to what appears to be an organic revolutionary movement of the people, because I know how the CIA operates. And they love to create the leadership for Black people, whether it's in America, whether it's in Africa. So just like what happened in Burkina Faso, I had to be slow to decide where I stood, because I had to make sure that the leadership was not just a CIA front that appeared to be revolutionary, that appeared to be a vanguard for the people, but was really an instrument of imperialism. With the Senegalese situation, I'm still not certain. It appeared on the surface that the young leader and what he was trying to do may have initially been for the people, but then there was some signs that this could have been orchestrated from beyond, because African people are so thirsty for true independence. And I say that in a positive vein. They're hungry, for true liberation, for true democracy. Sometimes we can be too quick to rally around a movement or rally around a leader without necessarily, having all the facts. So I'm still undecided on the Senegalese situation. I'm very much in support of the Burkina Faso situation at this time. I think Ibrahim Traoré has showed me enough at this point, for me to, believe he's probably the top Pan-Africanist on the continent at this time, an African revolutionary. But with Senegal, I got a lot more questions than answers.
Okay. Let's shift gears and talk about what's going on in Kenya, because once again, we have an African leader who seems to be at the will and the disposal of Europeans, who decided all of a sudden that he wanted to raise taxes, and young folk in that country weren't having it. What do you know about what's happening in that country?
I'm not surprised about Kenya. I spoke there, and it's been some time, but I spoke in Kenya several years ago at the University of Kenyatta. And I had a chance to go around the country somewhat and talk to the brothers and sisters on the ground. Very beautiful country and very politically conscious, citizens there. And one of the biggest things they spoke of was the governmental corruption. I distinctly remember being told by several of our Kenyan brothers and sisters that the government is allowing the East Indians and the Chinese to come in and buy up land and build industries and exploit Black wealth, but they weren't doing anything to empower the Black Africans of Kenya to be able to compete with these immigrants, who are coming in. But I just kept hearing about corruption, and more corruption. So to see this, I'm not surprised based on what I heard. I'm surprised that the government actually thought that the people were going to allow them to raise the taxes and not push back. They have gotten tired. And so, obviously Caucasians, because, Kenya was colonized by the British, they're looking at the situation to see if they can manipulate the grassroots leadership, because their job is to not, initially kill the revolution, but co-opt the revolution. It's always, to their interest to co-opt it. And then if they can't co-opt it, then they'll look at taking out the leader and replacing it with someone that they hand selected. I always remember the words of J. Edgar Hoover when he put out that famous, COINTELPRO statement. And one of the things he said was, if there's going to be another Black Messiah, we will choose him. And that's the same thing in Africa, but I think that what's going on in Kenya, just like South Africa, I think South Africa sooner or later is going to have another upswell by the people, with the African National Congress deciding to align itself with the Democratic Alliance, a white party, in order to remain in power. That was a smack in the face to a lot of the elders in South Africa who are still young enough to remember the freedom struggles in the independence movement of 1994. And so I think Kenya and South Africa are going to be ripe for rebellion. And I think a lot of other African countries are going to be ripe for rebellion as well. And that's because we're about 50, 60, 70 years after the independence explosion. And a lot of African people, as I travel and talk to them, and I was most recently in Cameroon, they are no longer under the illusion of inclusion or the delusion of democracy that American Africans suffer from. Over here, we're still very much under the illusion of inclusion. They don't have that in Africa. They know the governments are corrupt. They know the governments aren't doing things for them. And they now understand that simply having a vote does not replace having economic and political power. They want real economic and political power. They can no longer be assuaged with a vote and with the anthem. They want true liberation.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE, and we are also streaming live to YouTube and Facebook. You can join us on both of those online platforms, and we encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe to our channels. The channel is Vince Robinson. You can also join us on the journey with Hamtonio. Our guest this morning is Dr. Umar Johnson. He's a noted Pan-Africanist and psychologist. And I'd like to welcome into the conversation at this point, Brother Hamtonio, the creator, founder of 360 Info Network. Brother Hamtonio?
Yes. Again, appreciate Dr. Umar coming on, and agree with most of everything he said. And, and speaking on some of the things that's going on the continent. This is what, I've been saying as well, talking about there's some movement and some things going on in Africa that we need to know why they're going on, and just not sit on the sidelines and not understand that you're having a grassroots change of dynamics and paradigms on Africa, because you got them young folks over there, and and they understand, as Dr. Umar expressed, the corruption. They understand that the old guard is going to have to leave if they're not dealing with a Pan-African point of view. I just wanted to backtrack on a few things that were said initially on the show, and I like the expression that Dr. Umar coined, and we need to keep talking about that. He says American African. And so that's one thing we really need to understand, because we seem like we having problems with that. When we get on one track, we seem like we go somewhere else, and people, having an issue. We still having this issue from a long time ago about what we are and who we are. And that's why collectively, when we talk about this Republican Democratic situation, that we are in the position that we are in at this present day. So it's about us coming together. And I think And to go back and answer the question about would she be able to pull that white woman, I think one of the things that I think she's going to taunt and keep stressing that may pull some of the white women is the abortion issue. The abortion issue, I think, is one that she has the potential. Let me say it like that. Has the potential of pulling that white vote over, and I think they knows that, and I think that's what they're gonna drill home, because if you look at the previous midterm type elections and the local stuff in Ohio and all that abortion, that rights, and I think a woman is best to relay that message, you know, personally, to get to taking our rights. The government don't decide for us and stuff. Yeah. And that might be the talking point.
His energy.
Yes, that's what I think. That's that may be to her advantage. That might get her over to where she needs to go. Also, I wanted to say one thing too, as it relates to the schools, and that's why I commend our good brother Johnson for his efforts and working diligently to try to get to schools. Because if you recall on the show, I always talk about how come our top level, our top 10, is not working on the issue of the schools. You know, I don't think we reached the conscious level, seem like, in understanding that you can't let the same people that got you in this problem that we still talking since after King's death and even before and Garvey of dealing with the oppressive system that got you there. Dr. Amos Wilson said, what if we don't teach our kids to fix our issues of today, then what are we doing?
That's right.
So if we, you know, I just can't fathom the Cornel Wesses supposedly of the world don't understand that we need to have a homeschool. We got to keep teaching. We got to take control of our school, because the system is never going to teach our children to the level of them taking their foot off our throat. If we don't get that, we just missing the whole boat, because we just can't keep producing, you know, this type of attitude capitalist system, you know, just make you fit into this particular paradigm of America system. You know, we can't. What are you doing? You're just reproducing the same situation. We got to reproduce some babies that understand, for number one, who they are, and understand that this system is not working in our best interest, you know. So we got to fix our problems, whatever that might be. If our problems is entrepreneurship, then our schools should be teaching our babies how to own more businesses, and they need to understand why they need to support those businesses and things like that. So those are the things that, and in wrapping up, talking about the whole politics, you know, and that's why we having these particular discussions, is that is Dr. Umar hit it right on point, you know, and Dr. Claude Anderson. Until you come up with an agenda, you know, why should anybody pay you any attention?
Absolutely.
They're gonna take you for granted. If you got a wife that you know she's been there, you know, on your support, that's human nature. A person would kind of take them for granted because they know they're gonna be there. They can depend on them to be there. I ain't got to give them nothing. They always there. And so we again sit up here, you know, and let these little titles and things like that divide us. I'm Muslim, I'm this, I'm that, I'm Christian, and all of those things. And we don't come together on the common issues. We let those little things divide us, you know. And that's always been our little problem. And, you know, what Dr. Wilson says, well, the best way to immobilize a people or organization is to keep them consumed in their own discord, never getting anything done. And that's the game that's been played on us all the time. So until we come up with something, you're going to get the trickle-down effect. You're not putting your economic dollar together. You're not culturally sound. You're definitely not spiritually or religiously sound in doing anything. So you're just a bunch of individual people that's out there just run haphazardly doing nothing. And then you sit up here talking about why ain't they doing it for you? Why should they do something for you?
Absolutely.
You know, but anyway, that's my take on it.
You know, that inability to engage in non-emotional strategic thinking is a weakness of the American African people. We cannot do it. Even when you have this conversation about Vice President Harris and former President Trump, all the responses you get as to why people voting, not voting, choosing this one or choosing the other, it's emotional. It's not based on strategy. It's not based on the issues. It's, I don't like him. You know, she's black. You know, it's all emotional reasons why people are doing what they're doing. I hate Trump. You know, Kamala Harris is a black woman and I want to see somebody who looks like me for a change. That's emotionalism. Those are not sound reasons why you vote or don't vote for somebody because you don't like his personality or you love her complexion. That's insanity. But the problem with American Negroes is we deal with our politics the same way we deal with religion, emotion. How do we choose our pastor? Because we like them. How do we choose our church? I feel good over here. And when we come into politics, we do the same thing. Why did we vote for Barack Obama? He could speak well. He looks good. He got a black wife. He makes me feel better about myself. We didn't look at the issues. We didn't care about what he said about schools. We didn't care what he said about mass incarceration. We didn't care what he said about reparations because he absolutely did not support it while he was in office. But soon when he got out of office, now he's talking about we might need to have a conversation. So we got to stop being so emotional. We got to get into the habit of engaging in cerebral, non-emotional, strategic thinking. If we're going to be led by our emotions, we will be taken advantage of every time.
You know, that's a perfect segue into the conversation that we had about the National Association of Black Journalists convention that's in progress right now. Earlier in the week, they had the opportunity to interview the former president, and it seemed as though it was an emotional interview, just as you said. And secondly, you also mentioned that there weren't any brothers on the panel. Would you like to expand on your comments about the convention and that interview?
Absolutely. I was disappointed because everybody looked forward to it. I'm sure they had millions of viewers because it was talked about, you know, very well advertised and marketed. And I would just assume, you know, that there would be a gender balance. There's only 3 people, so obviously there's going to be more of one gender than the other. But you could have at least had a brother up there to articulate issues that affect Black men, and for sisters who often talk about the fact that their voice is not heard amongst, you know, a plethora of Black male leaders. I thought they would have been sensitive enough to not engage, you know, in that same sort of biased behavior, but that's exactly what they did. No Black men, no Black male issues raised. They really didn't raise a lot of critical issues for the Black community. To me, it looked much like a Kamala Harris Defense Committee whose job was to simply make, you know, President Trump look like an idiot, which he doesn't need a lot of, you know, help doing. But my thing is, talk about the critical issues. I'll give you one. Donald Trump kept talking about Black jobs, you know, in his debate with President Biden a few weeks ago. Well, if Donald Trump wants to bring up the fact that Joe Biden is giving Black jobs to the migrants, and he is, given the fact that Donald Trump comes from a corporate background, why don't you ask him about building some industries in the Black community, using his corporate relationships to bring some factories and industries into Black America to give our people some livable wage jobs so they don't have to engage in petty crime on the streets? That would have been a good question for Donald Trump. What industries are you going to bring to Black America? What are you going to do about the school system? What are your plans for criminal justice overhaul? What are you going to do to target gentrification? None of the major issues affecting the American African people were addressed by those 3 sisters. And I respect them and I love them, but I really believe that it was a missed opportunity, once again, wasted on emotionalism and defense of the Democratic Party platform, as opposed to an advocacy experiment that looks out for Black people.
Well, you know, it's interesting. One of your dear brothers, one of your favorite journalists on the planet, Brother Roland Martin, had a front row seat. And after the fact, he did an analysis of the situation, and he talked about all the things that you just mentioned that should have been talked about. Perhaps he should have been on that panel. The 45 would not have been able to respond the same way that he did to those sisters.
I agree.
I think the other thing is it's really questionable as to whether or not he should have even been invited to that party,
Mm,
because it's my perspective that a much more valuable use could have been made of the moments that they spent with him talking about other things.
absolutely. Let me ask you this. I heard that they originally extended the invitation to Vice President Harris and she declined it. Is there any truth to that? I was told that it should have been Kamala Harris in that seat and not Trump, but she declined the invite.
Yeah, I'm not aware of why she declined the invite. I do believe that she was invited, and I can verify this because I'm, in all transparency, I'm a member of the National Association of Black Journalists. But I just think that she could have been there, perhaps virtually, if she couldn't make it in person. There were some things, and we really needed to hear from her because we already know what his policies are.
Absolutely. He's clear. He's
Yeah.
unapologetic.
Right. So we really need to hear from her in terms of her positions on things like immigration, things like central bank digital currency and cryptocurrency. And I'll just, not to harp on that subject, but I do think that there is some, I guess, movement in Democrats accepting it. You know, you've got folks like Maxine Waters and Elizabeth Warren, who traditionally have been against cryptocurrency, and they've got their feet planted in the sand about that. But if they want to win this election, they're going to have to make a pivot, because people, as I said before, are becoming more aware of it and need to become more aware of the implications of it, and the fact that if we don't understand what's going on, it's going to be used as a weapon against us, as it already has been.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, what are some of the other issues that you see as being important in this election, and ways that our folk can come out on top if Democrats get their way?
Hey Vince, it may be a good piece too of what we talked about a month ago. I would like to hear what Umar's take is on the Project 2025.
Oh, yes. Yes.
You know, with the 2025, when I go down that list, I honestly believe a lot of those agenda items are already being introduced to some level or other. In fact, some of them have even been championed by Democrats as well. You know, when I look at the Social Security issue, there are Democrats who also want to do away, you know, with the Social Security. You know, so I when I look at it, I say, yes, these are problem issues. They clearly are. But these aren't new issues, though. You know, it just looks like they basically collected all the things that they've been trying to work on over the past 2 or 3 presidential administrations and put them on the list. But the thing about
they started that since 1970 something. They said they started.
It reminded me of Newt Gingrich. Remember his contract on America back in the 1990s? That's the first thing that came to my mind was Newt Gingrich's contract on America. So they come up with these things from time to time, and they are problematic. But here's my question to Black folks, because everybody's talking about the Project 2025. Where is our Project 2025? What are we going to be doing with our $2 trillion and our voting power between now and next year? That's the question. Everybody has an agenda, you know, except Black folks. And to me, that is a very big issue. Another thing, that migrant crisis. That migrant crisis is a big deal because they are purging our people out of Chicago and New York. I mean, to be in a city where you have that many homeless people in Chicago and New York, and to watch people who are not even citizens be given credit cards, to be given childcare, to be given free housing above and beyond. Black veterans who actually served in Vietnam, served in the Gulf War, they're on the street begging for food, sleeping under tents. And you got folks who just crossed the border a few weeks ago being put up in 4- and 5-star hotels in Chicago. Public schools that they said they could not afford to operate for Black children, they have reopened and are not only operating these schools for migrant children, but turning the upper floors into apartments for the families to live in, whereas the children could just go downstairs in the morning and go to school. The way that they are rolling out the red carpet for the migrants, I think it's crystal clear, in my opinion, that they intend to replace Black people with the brown people. And added to this, gentlemen, is a problem we have, as I popularly call it, the snow bunny crisis, the interracial dating and procreation crisis in the Black community is going to create a numerical issue where one day soon you may have more mixed race African Americans than you have pure blood African Americans, meaning a obviously African mother and an obviously African father. And once you have more mixed race American Africans than traditional American Africans, America can then completely ignore the rest of us and make the mixed race African the new standard of African American in this society. When you look at the amount of mixed race children that we have, and I still consider them African if they psychologically identify with us on a full-time basis. But that does not dismiss the fact that many of them will not identify with us on a full-time basis. They're going to align themselves with the power structure, and you're going to get a situation like you have in South Africa, an entire community of Black people who call themselves colored, who do not in any way, shape, form, or fashion stand in solidarity with the Black South Africans, who in no shape, form, or fashion advocate for the Black South Africans, and in many cases are used by the white power structure against the Black South Africans. We are going to encounter that same thing in America if we keep on making babies with non-African women. And the other big issue is Black femicide. The number of Black women who are dying in the process of giving birth is astronomical. Black America leads the world in infanticide, stillbirth babies coming out, infant mortality, Black women dying on the delivery table. How can it be possible for women who have been having babies since the beginning of time, the oldest civilization on earth, the oldest population on earth is the African woman, and when she comes to America, she can't have a baby without dying? I have yet to hear Kamala Harris address this issue, and I know the abortion issue is getting all the attention, but somebody needs to address Black femicide. And to that National Association of Black Journalism panel with former President Trump, that was definitely an issue that should have been brought up. Them sisters brought up the abortion situation, but what about Black femicide? What about all the Black women who are dying in the process of giving birth? That needs to be addressed as well.
Something else that comes up in the conversations about the vice president and her plan for Black America is the notion that she's taken a similar tack that President Obama took, and that was that we can't focus on the needs exclusively of Black people. We have that whole rising tide raises all boats paradigm that's brought into the conversation. But there are others who realize that specific attention has been given to particular aspects of our population.
Yes.
In the past, an anti-Asian crime bill was passed. And then you had the protections that have been provided for the LGBTQ plus community, so forth and so on. But when it comes to us, we're living in this crisis. You just mentioned the Black maternal issue. Why is it that you can't focus on us? And then the other thing, and we're running out of time in terms of our 12 o'clock noon time frame, but this idea of reparations. We never have any substantive conversations about the debt that's owed to Black America, but we can pay the Asians and we can compensate other people. And now we're giving immigrants all this money that's coming out of our pockets. It just seems that we need to have a really substantive conversation about that paradigm and what we can do to shift it.
And this goes back to my earlier point that we are still engaging in dysfunctional political behavior. You have Black people out here crashing out for Kamala Harris. I mean, they're on social media canceling anyone who disagrees with supporting her, and yet you haven't had a single conversation or asked a single question. I cannot believe with the amount of attention that reparations receives in this country, I cannot believe that Kamala Harris has yet to be asked publicly about reparations. And I also believe one of the reasons she did not show up in Chicago is because she was too afraid that she might get asked some serious questions, which we obviously see would not have happened in happenstance. But I believe she was concerned, and her campaign committee was concerned, that if she goes to Chicago this early in her campaign, and if she's being asked some serious questions about Black folks that she does not intend to answer correctly, she may begin to lose the momentum. I don't think they're going to allow Kamala Harris to answer any serious questions from Black people until close to election time, because they don't want to kill the momentum. And that is a stain against us. If we are going to let this woman run around, champion herself as an advocate for us, the person we should be putting in office, and give her no questions at all, especially after what Barack Obama did for 8 years of ignoring Black people, then at the end of the day, as Brother Hamtonio said, the joke is on us. Like, why would anybody pay you any attention? Why would I do anything for Black people if I'm going to get voted in without even having a conversation with Black people? Obama did it, and now Kamala is going to do it.
Well, it's interesting. We talk about this idea of democracy, and one of the major ideas that the Democrat Party is pushing right now is we have a choice between democracy and dictatorship. But when you look at the reality of that situation, where's the democracy if the people of this country didn't have the opportunity to decide who they wanted to run for president, whether it be Biden, whether it be Harris, whether it be RFK or anyone else? I think democracy is largely an illusion. And I think the people of this country are being manipulated emotionally.
Yep.
You're a psychologist, and I wanted to ask you about the former president's state of mind, because clearly he's exemplifying some of the symptoms of narcissism and those of a psychopath. When you look at the way he handled that interview, I mean, he's gaslighting. He's not answering questions.
Absolutely.
And then we get sucked into it. We have just a few moments in the radio broadcast. Brother Hamtoni, I want to give you an opportunity to jump in if there's anything that you want to share before we conclude the radio broadcast.
No, just basically, we could keep the conversation. None jumps out on me that we don't have to mention. I'm just enjoying what Brother Umar is talking about at this particular point. So
okay,
we can segue on it. Mm-hmm.
All right, and also wanted to take an opportunity to ask Brother Umar if he has anything that he wants to make the folks aware of, aside from being at Eastern Michigan University today. We have about, I'd say about 50 seconds left in the broadcast before we make the transition over to Facebook and YouTube as we do. So at this point, I'd just like to remind the listeners to go to our channel, subscribe to the channel. You'll get a notification whenever we do broadcasts like these so that you won't miss out on them, or you can view them at a later time. We'd also like to thank those of you who are listening to us on the radio for tuning in on your AM radio dial. AM radio is something that is kind of a thing of the past in terms of the way people get content. So we appreciate you being here, and we appreciate our engineer, Tone Harley, for pulling everything together so that we can be with you today. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your absolute best day. Peace.
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 All right. We are live on Facebook and YouTube. Our guest is Dr. Umar Johnson, currently in Ypsilanti, Michigan, at the Eastern Michigan University, where there's going to be some consciousness raised today.
Yes, yes.
This is definitely a time for consciousness raising. Brother Umar, I want to kind of segue into what we talked about before we concluded the radio broadcast, and that is the psychology of a narcissist and a psychopath. And it's really amazing to me how there are so many people in this country who don't really understand who this person is, what he represents, and the damage that he can do to a country that doesn't fully understand his agenda. We talked about Project 2025 and the fact that there's nothing new about it. I mean, when you look at the Heritage Foundation, they go way back to Nixon's time. And many of the things that they have implemented over the years, and some of the things that they're implementing right now, are not new ideas. And the fact that we have states that are Republican states means that there are parties that are putting those things in motion. You can look at the ban on critical race theory. You can look at the way some governors are taking control of their state departments of education. You can look at the way that they're implementing measures to suppress votes, clear the voting rolls of people who haven't participated in the previous few elections. I mean, there are a lot of things that we should be concerned about. We should be concerned about right now, not about in January 2025, when Republicans could potentially take control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency. So just wondering what your thoughts are about his state of mind and whether or not he's even capable or appropriate to be leading the world's so-called most powerful nation.
Yeah, the one thing that comes to mind, obviously, is the fact that, the presidents are faces more than institutions. They follow orders as much as they give them. But, whenever you're dealing with narcissism, to your point, you got to have enablers. All personality disorders, in order for them to succeed, they must be enabled. So whether you're dealing with narcissistic personality, antisocial personality, depressive personality, you got to have people around you who are going to enable you. And I think Donald Trump has a whole bunch of enablers. I think that in my opinion, what I would call an artificial assassination attempt, I think that also helped to feed the narcissistic agenda, because, as he said at the Republican National Convention, I took a bullet for my country. Those were his exact words. I took a bullet for my country, so Donald Trump is really feeling himself. But he has a very energized, very loyal, very unapologetic base that supports him in carrying that, situation out. And, to that assassination attempt, I would say that I believe the reason it was carried out artificially was to distract the American public from Donald Trump's responsibility towards the January 6th insurrection. If you notice, ever since that phony assassination attempt in Pennsylvania, you hear almost nothing about the January 6th insurrection. You don't hear almost anything about it. Even his charges were dropped after that, because that assassination attempt effectively rebranded Donald Trump, as an aggressor, and he's now viewed as a victim. He was falsely tried, falsely convicted. They tried to take his life. So they have really done a great job rebranding his image as a victim as opposed to being a perpetrator of violence.
Yeah. And it goes to the emotional aspect of it. People who have responded to that, it's really interesting too, that the person who was running the Secret Service organization had to resign after that.
Yeah.
She was grilled by folks on Capitol Hill, and she didn't have answers that she should have had. So clearly it seems as though there was something artificial about that. There was also a question as to whether or not a bullet actually touched his head. I think there have been some reports that it may have been a glass fragment or something like that. And then the whole idea that you had this police operation under the building in which the shooter was on, there was notification to the authorities that there was somebody on top of the building with a gun, and they didn't neutralize him before the event, but they neutralized him after the event. There are also allegations that there may have been more than one shooter. So something about that just doesn't seem right to those who have critical analysis and thinking abilities. And to get to the issue of education, and I know this is kind of an aside, but I think that's one of the issues with America. We do not cultivate critical thought and analysis.
No.
What we do is we indoctrinate people, teach them a system that can be duplicated so that they can serve as effective workers.
Absolutely.
But now here we are at the age of artificial intelligence, and now you got robots flipping burgers and taking orders and answering calls, and you interact with bots when you're on the internet. I mean, jobs are they're just being taken away. What are you going to do with all these people when you don't need that worker supply, and the education system doesn't serve to teach us things like how our bodies work and how to grow food and how to start and be a successful business owner, all the things that we get through cultural affectation, as a people. And this is one of the big issues, and we talk about culture on the show all the time. One of the biggest problems that we have as a people is that we're not connected to a culture that allows us to be authentically who we are.
Absolutely.
We look at the 7 principles. We talk about this all the time. Cooperative economics. Circulate the dollars in your community. Hamtonio talks about this all the time. If there's a shirt, somebody in your community can make the shirt and you can buy the shirt from that person. He gets to feed his family and the money circulates in our community. We don't do that. We went through this period of being segregated and having this idea that separate but unequal was an issue. And then we had the opportunity to be, quote unquote, included through integration. And then when we became integrated, we abandoned our businesses that empowered us in our communities. And we just basically turned our resources over to someone who doesn't, it's the same thing on the continent of Africa. Same thing.
Yes.
They're sitting on top of all of those resources. They take those resources, they send them off somewhere else. They manufacture those things and then they send them back. And then you pay a high price for something that you should have been manufacturing yourself.
Well, Doctor, sorry, Vince, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but it's Dr. Umar is a psychologist, okay, and you can see plainly that it's a psychological issue that is going on right here, because it don't make sense, and you can bring those syndromes into play, from Willie Lynch to Stockholm or whatever, but like I brought up in some other issues about training an animal. How do you train an animal and get a elephant to roll over, or a lion or things of that nature? It's certain things like Dr. Wilson said, punishment is a form of control, but rewarding someone is a form of control as well. So you display that type of behavior. So, we talk about all the time, this is a consciousness problem. That elephant still think he tied up when he got a little piece of string on. You got a whole internet network where you can go and study and all kind of information that you can gain. Well, how come we're not doing it? How come we're not using this tool effectively? It has to be something going on here. If you see that opportunity is right across the street and you negate the walk across the street to get it to better yourself, something psychologically is wrong with you, And so when you're dealing with, like what Brother Johnson would definitely verify, when you talk about the substance abuse arena, what do they say? They say before healing can take place, you got to first recognize you got a problem.
That's right.
And so if that is most of us is in this little zombie zone walking around here and feeding in, like you say, we gave up everything through integration. Like Dr. Claude Anderson said, when we was asked what we want, we didn't want the reparations at that particular time when we was talking about Black Power, rediscovering ourselves connected to Africa, wearing dashikis and all this other stuff. We just wanted to be included.
That's it.
We wanted to be accepted.
That's right.
And so what is that? That's why the psychologists go through this whole Stockholm syndrome thing. The same people that got you in this problem, that oppress you, you just want to be accepted with and be like them. And what Dr. Whitaker said, he said the threat, that's what scared me. He said, if we get this country by default by being black and brown and 2050 or whatever, and things of that nature, the threat and the problem is that we're just going to implement the same system that we know. We don't know a communal African Afrocentric point of view of doing anything. All we know is this. So it's going to be capitalist system 2.0 if we do take over.
That's right.
And that's the tragedy of the whole thing, because we don't know who we are, and our ancestors are turning over in the grave and saying, when you going to try me? You the oldest people on the planet. Okay, all our social issues that we are being confronted with right now, our ancestors already solved those things. You know, how to get along with each other, your role of a man, how to, you know, spend your money with it, how to deal with people that is different from you, how to coexist with the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the environment. All those things is laid out what our ancestors have given us. But the man's negative campaign to disassociate ourselves with, that's why I like Dr. Umar said, American Africans. See, we nothing but an African in America, but we disassociate ourselves with us, and so we turn our back to what the old kids of the block. What's the African proverb? It says, "You don't teach the path of the forest to an old gorilla." We've been here. How you gonna teach me some stuff that you the new kids on the block? And look what the new kids on the block, the ecosystem is gone, the ozone system, race relations, everything. Everything is all messed up because these new kids on the block come in, and we follow in that lead. That's crazy.
Well said. Well said. And you know, to that point of community reconstruction, because we definitely need a reconstruction. I think two things where we need to start, you know, outside of economics and education, obviously, we need to bring back our councils of elders. Every Black community needs a council of responsible eldership. The eldership, they are the judiciary in the Black community. They are the courts in the Black community. They are the legislators in the Black community. For so long, we have not included our elders into the process of community reconstruction and rehabilitation. We definitely need to rebuild councils of elders. I think it would cut down on a lot of the violence. It would cut down on a lot of the conflict. It would cut down on a lot of the domestic abuse, because as it stands right now, good brothers, if you have an issue with another African in your community, financial, romantic, whatever the case is, you either going to engage in street justice or white man justice. There's no other options. I'm either going to take this into my own hands and do something that might get me in trouble, or I'm going to go to the white man. There's no system of justice imposed by the people for the people. We got to bring the elders back. That is extremely important. And the other thing we need is we need a Black community guard. Now, of course, we have a lot of militia organizations. Shout out to all of them. They've done my personal security on many, many occasions. The Huey Newton Gun Club, Fred Hampton Gun Club, New Black Panther Party, you name it. But we need to organize them. They need to come together and organize themselves into a community guard, meaning when Black men and Black women are engaging in crimes against the community, not crimes against the government, crimes against the community, they are picked up by the community guard and taken somewhere and dealt with if necessary. You can only change behavior with consequences and resources. That's it. The only two things people respond to: black, white, red, yellow, brown. Consequences and resources. And as of right now, the Black community doesn't give out any consequences. We don't give out any rewards for appropriate behavior. We don't give out punishments for inappropriate behavior. And we don't have resources that would motivate people to do what needs to be done, because we have nothing to offer our own.
But, you know, we come back to the reality that there's a disconnect between the elders and the youth. There's a lot of intergenerational conflict that is evident right now. And then the other piece is with respect to us providing our own protectionism. Many Black people in this country have no idea of nationalist consciousness. They're pushed back on Black nationalism because of our pressure to integrate into a system that doesn't accept us. What are your thoughts about the generational divide?
That's a great point, Brother Vince. And I'm going to go straight to the men. I'm going to go straight to the men And both of you brothers know this to be true based on your works and experience within Black conscious organizations and the conscious community in general. And that is this: there is a young lion, old lion conflict in the Black community. You see it everywhere, from the Black church to the Black nationalist organizations, where we do not have an intergenerational transfer of power, where the elders in leadership train and gradually transfer power and authority to the next generation. This is the reason we got a church on every corner. This is the reason we got a Black consciousness movement in every neighborhood. Why? Because the young lion wants a chance to lead. The young lion wants a chance to organize, and the old lion doesn't want to give him that. The old lion wants to appropriate all of the attention, all of the authority, doesn't want to share at all in the decision-making process. So the young lion gets tired, and he does what? Leave the church and start his own church. Leave the Black conscious organization, start his own organization. And here's the hypocrisy and the irony. When he becomes the elder, guess what? He does the exact same thing to the next generation as was done to him. So you didn't even learn from what you went through. You practiced the same narcissism of Black leadership that led you to leave the church, that led you to quit the conscious movement. If you notice, we are the only community in this country where the organizations, the traditional organizations, are dominated by elders, not youth. And the reason our traditional organizations, from the church to the conscious community, are dominated by elders is we don't have any intergenerational protocol to transfer authority and leadership after sufficient training. If you look at Black nationalism, our great and mighty organizations, very few of them have a protocol to train and transfer leadership to the next generation. Most of them have a leader who sits in the seat until he either joins the ancestors or is too physically inept to continue in that position. Black American leadership has largely been dictatorial, which is interesting, right? Because Black people are saying, I don't want to vote for Donald Trump because he's a dictator. Well, guess what? The culture of Black organizations, I'm talking about the ones we run ourselves, from churches to community, it is also very dictatorial. There's very little democracy in Black conscious organizations, and very much narcissism at the top. If we want to break that down, we're going to have to come to some sort of an agreement between the elders and the youth. To what you said, Brother Vince, that lack of communication, that lack of being on the same page is being exacerbated by the fact that there's no transfer of leadership. Most young people, and I'm dealing with it every day with the young guys in the 20s and 30s. Dr. Umar, I'm in this group. We're not allowed to have a voice. The elders don't let us do anything. We feel like we in preschool. I mean, I love the elders. I love the organization, but I want to do something. And they're basically telling me, we founded the organization and we're going to die running this organization. And that's why I always say, when we're evaluating Black leadership, we really have to study the Black male personalities that we come across to determine, is this brother in leadership for the people, or is he in leadership for himself? And if we take this to the furthest extreme, look at all the Black leaders who were murdered because somebody else wanted their position. Malcolm X murdered because somebody wanted his position. We can go to Africa. Kwame Nkrumah overthrown by his friends. Thomas Sankara assassinated by his stepbrother. That is how thirsty Black men have become. That is how indoctrinated and inoculated we are with European power and hunger for power, that we will kill each other for the right to lead. That narcissistic personality disorder within Black organizations, that lack of intergenerational transfer of power from one generation to the next, that is something that we have not dealt with as Black men.
You know, something else is kind of another elephant in the room, and that is the divide between Black men and Black women. Woo! Because it seems as though we're in a pissing contest. to say who has it worse. You know, we're all in the same boat, you know,
Yep.
but the sisters have it worse, the brothers, you know, we both have it bad.
Both have it
And
bad.
then as a result, we have dysfunctionality in our relationships.
Mm.
And a lot of that has to do with the way we see each other,
Mhm.
the way we see our roles, the
Mhm.
misunderstanding that we have about our roles, and the dysfunction that happens now because these things are being amplified on social media. So you got folks who now they got a phone, they got a camera, they got a mic, and they can just spout off all the dysfunction that's in their head that they want to share with the world. You know, I know this is not a question that you personally can answer, but the question in my mind is, what can we do to bring brothers and sisters to get us on the same page and not put us in the situation where we got sisters saying, well, we don't have that many options, so we have to start looking out for other options, and that other option is not the brother that you could be in a relationship with, but you're projecting all this negativity on him because of dysfunction or trauma from your past. And I know you can address that as a psychologist.
Yes, sir. That's a very good point. I think, and added to that narrative that's being put out there by some brothers and some sisters, is the family trauma that so many of us have been subjected to. And so what you're hearing in those narratives is the pain of unaddressed trauma from the family systems that we grew up in. And I think that it's time for us to start having community conversations. Black men and Black women need to start talking with each other as opposed to talking to each other, because all I'm seeing is spiritually traumatized woman attacking spiritually traumatized man, and spiritually traumatized man attacking spiritually traumatized woman. We are not a spiritually healthy people. We haven't been, but we don't know that because we still go to church. We still go to the masjid. We still go to the traditional African temples. And because we participate in the rituals and we participate in the culture, we think we're healthy. Absolutely not. When you look at the divorce rate in the Black community, when you look at the low marriage rate in the Black community, when you look at the fact that Black women are more likely to be murdered by their partner than any other woman, a Black woman is 8 times more likely to be murdered by her partner, who will usually be Black, than any other woman in this country. You got to deal with that. And then you look at the child support and the custody trauma that a lot of Black men have to go through just to see their children. All of this is feeding the population control agenda of the American power structure. And you know what's so sad about this? This back and forth between the brothers and sisters all over the internet, all over social media, where you see Black men telling the world, I don't care about Black women. You see Black women telling the world the Black man is no good. The saddest thing about all of this, our children are watching and they are being indoctrinated by this. And mind you, brothers, this is coming at a time where the American power structure is trying to indoctrinate our children into the notion that the only way you can be happy romantically is to date someone of the same gender or date someone of another race. If you look at the commercials, if you look at the movies, if you look at all the miniseries, if you look at the sitcoms, if you look at all the newspapers, every time you see a Black person, at least 80% of the time, they're with somebody of the same gender or somebody of another race. There is definitely a campaign to eliminate the idea of Black on Black heterosexual love, and we're feeding right into it.
You muted.
Sorry about that. Just the whole idea of this multicultural piece that they're pushing on us. You know, I remember seeing that Cheerios commercial with the biracial child, you know, and it just seems that they keep repeating that. But the thing that we have to consider right now is that we are at war. You know, people are talking about World War III. World War it's been in progress. You know, the bombs and the missiles, that's just an affectation that people focus on. But the real war is the war against us and this whole depopulation agenda. And again, something we talk about all the time. we're under attack by microwave radiation. We're under attack by chemicals that are falling from the sky from planes that are depleting minerals in the soil. We're under attack by the information that we're fed on a continuous basis. I mean, if you see somebody walking down the street without looking at their phones, you're looking at a rarity.
Yes.
Because we have this compelling need to be plugged in all the time. And we're getting all this information. We're getting way too much information. And at a point, there has to be a time when we just disconnect and take some time to appreciate the beauty that surrounds us. And also to not be trapped in this idea that we have to be in a perpetual state of fear, you know, just like they're throwing Project 2025 at us. Part of the reason for that is they want us to be fearful about what they could do to us when they're already doing it to us. So the real question is, what are we going to do about what is being done to us? What can we do to change the paradigm? I think it's really important for us to consider that.
That's a great point, Brother Vince. And to that point, I'm going to say this. The reason why Black America must be inoculated with fear, especially around campaign season, is because we have no other reason to vote. Think about that for a minute. There's nothing on the table that specifically relates to our conditions and our concerns. So how do you get people to vote who you ain't doing nothing for, ain't discussing nothing about, and don't plan to include? You must inoculate them with fear. Most Black people who will vote on November the 5th are voting not because they have the right, not because of the ancestor struggle, because I am afraid of what will happen if the other person wins. And that goes on both sides, because you got Black folks for Trump, you got Black folks for Kamala, and both of them are motivated by fear. And they can't be motivated by nothing else because neither candidate has said anything else as it relates to the Black community.
I'm just really struggling, Brother Umar, to understand why a Black person would think that it was in their interest to vote for the former president.
Ooh, it's the economics. What I keep hearing when I talk to Black men, they keep talking about the platinum plan that President Trump introduced, former President Trump introduced when he was running for re-election the last cycle against President Biden. You know, he had that platinum plan. He said, I was going to put so much money into Black businesses. I'm going to put so much money into entrepreneurship. I'm going to put so much money into youth financial literacy. And he called it the platinum plan. And you know us, we addicted to material. I'm going to be honest with you. I was offended by the fact he called it the platinum plan, because he wouldn't have called it that for any other group. Why is it the platinum plan for Black folks? He's speaking to that conspicuous consumption energy. He's speaking to that materialistic addiction that Black people have, a platinum plan, you know? And so to me, that was an insult. And so a lot of Black men, they're looking at the fact that they've been so economically disenfranchised for so long. And Donald Trump is the only presidential candidate who has ever spoken directly to Black men about their economic crisis. Obama didn't do it. Trump didn't do it. The Bushes didn't do it. Clinton, Reagan, none of them did it. Nixon, Ford, Carter, none of them did it. So Black men are saying, listen, Dr. Umar, I hear what you're saying, but guess what? Donald Trump ain't said a word about Black men in economics. Kamala Harris ain't said a word about Black men in economics. Donald Trump might be the Antichrist, as they call him. But guess what? If he's going to give me a better job, if he's going to give me an opportunity to build my own business, I got to go with it.
You know, I'm thinking about what happened with the board of Tennessee State University. It was determined that over $1 billion, I think it was maybe close to $2 billion, was owed that institution over a period of 30 years, funds that they did not get from the federal government. And then the state legislature voted to remove the board and start with something else. But then we have these ideas that the federal government has done so much for HBCUs. It's coming from both sides of the fence. But the reality is that the institutional racism and the discrimination exists within that paradigm. And the bottom line is that we're being lied to.
We're being lied to. And I'm going to tell you this. I went to Millersville University in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Millersville has 14 state institutions. The one black one is Cheney State University, which is the first institution of higher education in America. Lincoln University, right up the road, is the first degree granting institution of higher education. And I believe Wilberforce in Ohio is the first of those to be actually afforded the title university. But Cheney was the first institution of higher learning in the country for our people. And I saw how my college, Millersville, received all kind of grants, all kind of funding. Millersville got so much money that they was building stuff that didn't need to be built because they just needed to spend the money. I mean, they would build dorms, tear them down in 5 years, build more dorms, build a new student center, tear it down in 10 years, build a new student center. I promise you, when I go back for homecoming, the campus is going to look completely different. They've conducted a surgery, cosmetic surgery on that campus at least 10 times since I've been there, at least 10 times. And then I go to Cheney State, same old buildings, Cheney State, same old vehicles, Cheney State, same old facilities. And I saw this as a student, how Millersville University and Westchester University were being taken care of abundantly well financially by the state, and Cheney State was being ignored. So I know for a fact that HBCUs are being mishandled, but they have an even bigger problem now. I don't know if you brothers heard about, I'm sure you did, the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action in admissions policies in higher education a couple months ago. Of course, Supreme Court Justice Kuhn Thomas, okay, he was at the head of that. That striking down of affirmative action in higher education, which was a lawsuit brought by Students for Fair Admissions, SFFA, which is ran by a white man who went out and got Asian students to file a complaint against black students at PWI, arguing that there are black students in PWI's Harvard University and the University of North Carolina in particular that were given underqualified black students seats at the university that more qualified Asians should have received. So the white man got the yellow man to do in the black man. So the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action in college. As a result of that, HBCUs have now been getting threatening letters saying that if you are given preferential admission, listen to this, brothers, if you are giving preferential admission to black students at an HBCU, a school founded to give admission to black students, we will sue you. We will sue you into non-existence. Howard University Medical School. I'm going to give you one example, and they're not alone. Howard University Medical School a couple weeks ago got a letter threatening that if you are giving black students preferential admission into your medical college above Asians and whites who are more qualified, we will sue you and strip you of the little bit of money that you're already getting. If we don't do something to radically create an economic vehicle that funds HBCUs, I don't know how many of them will be left now into the 22nd century. And if they are left, I don't know how many of them will still be a predominantly black institution. Remember, we already have an HBCU that is predominantly white today. I visited it. Bluefield State in West Virginia is an HBCU that is now a PWI. And if these conservatives and these racists continue to get their way, they're going to gentrify. They are going to gentrify every HBCU that they possibly can. And the weapon is going to be the intimidation that if we catch you letting black students into an HBCU when there's better qualified Asians and Caucasians, we will strip you of your credentials. That's going on right now.
But that's what I've said before, and when we was talking about some other things in the greater scheme, is that we're under attack. You know what, Dr. Johnson, of what I've seen some things that you talked about before with the HBC, and you hit it right there when you said we got to find another vehicle. That begging situation can slowly be eliminated.
Yes.
And you mentioned it with the Deion Sanders situation.
Oh man.
You see that? I know. If he would have stuck to his guns,
Woo.
and if we had some kind of community awareness about and on a high school talent level, training our kids and making them understand that they can take that talent to the HBCUs.
Yes.
You don't have to be going around begging.
Thank you.
Money like that.
And I got to give you one more, Brother Antonio, not to cut you off, but I don't want to forget this one. Every year, the Divine Nine, as y'all know, our Black Greek-lettered fraternities and sororities, they have an annual conference, annual boule, where they go to different cities around America, right? And they party and they meet and they plan for their fraternities and sororities. Can somebody explain to me why the Divine Nine isn't hosting their conferences and boules at the HBCU? You mean to tell me you're going to give Marriott Hotel and Sheraton Hotel and Disneyland and Disney World millions of dollars for a weekend? For a weekend, they drop 30, 40, and $50 million into these Caucasian economies when Cheney State can use that money. South Carolina State can use that money. Morris Brown just got their accreditation back. They can use that money. Wilberforce can use that money. Central State can use that money. I'm trying to understand why the HBCUs are not stepping to the Black Greeks and saying, why you ain't bringing us that $50 million for a weekend? It might not be as pretty as the Marriott. It might not be as pretty as the Sheraton, but we got dormitories. We got the cafeteria. We got all the meeting space. In my opinion, one of the biggest untapped resources of financial strength for the HBCU is their very own HBCU alumni in these Black Greek-lettered fraternities.
Don't leave all our Mason brothers now. We all can do better. I mean, we have these, and what you said, I've been talking for a whole bunch of years, because we don't have nowhere to facilitate these people. I mean, we have some places, but they still want to go to places that, they have that, that glitter and gold that they want to drop all that money. I mean, you can see it here locally. We take all our, the Deltas would go here, they would go there, and drop all them dollars. That's why I always stress the avenue of having our own places to facilitate our stuff. We got, like you say, it might not be the best right now, but guess what? You keep participate, you keep dropping the dime on it, because what you can do, people can go to the bank. And when you have these contracts are saying that they're hosting this conference, they're hosting that conference, you could go to the bank and take that letter of intent and use it for collateral for money, because they see that you got a stream of events coming up and you want to make your building larger or things of that nature. You got commitments on the book that all these functions are taking place in your facility. So you can use that as leverage and collateral to help boost up, to get your building together to that particular standard. But you got to have the right mindset on why you're doing it. What the purpose is. Like I said, we're not raising that type of individual no more that would pass 10 stores to drop his money with the right one he needs to be participating and paying $1 more. See, that's a certain kind of mindset that an individual needs to have in order to understand that. But like we talked about earlier, we want to be accepted, we want to be included. That's our value system, and again, I got to quote my boy again, Dr. Wilson, change your value system. The man loses his power over you because he's dangling that stuff in front of you. You got to have this glitter and go. You got to have that. If you say, I don't even want that mess more, now he got to find out how he going to keep you in control right now, because you saying, I don't even need that stuff, and now he got to treat you and work with you totally different,
Well, I think we're looking at the illusion of freedom in our country, because we have people like Bob Johnson, like Oprah Winfrey, like Michael Jordan, who are billionaires. And then we buy into the Horatio Alger idea that, you know, you can go from nothing to something. And it's that carrot that's being dangled, when the reality is people in this country are enslaved through the financial and economic system.
Yes.
Think about this.
Yes.
You have a small number of people who control the wealth of the planet. And if they just broke off a fraction of their massive holdings and shared it with people, everybody could have a house, everybody could have a car, everybody could have a decent education. All needs would be met.
The whole world.
But they have such tight control over it. And then the inequity of the system. Why is it that the people who have the most get taxed the least, and the people who have the least get taxed the most? There's just something. So we live under this illusion that we live in a free country.
That's right.
That's a good one.
But it's just it's an illusion, you know.
That's right.
And the plans that they have for us now is that they want to limit us even more.
Yes.
So when you look at these ideas like 15-minute cities, how impractical is that? If I want to buy an organic avocado, I have to drive to a suburb all the way across town just to get an avocado. I can't just drive to the market that's within walking distance from my house, because this market located in a Black community does not provide fresh produce. And then the produce that they have there is not organic. It's compromised. It's coated with apeel, which Bill Gates is responsible for, allegedly. So even if I were to go to the store, I can't get something that's going to be suitable for me. But then they want to tell you that, oh, yes, well, we're planning these 15-minute cities and everything that you need will be within 15 minutes of your house. So you can walk, you can ride a bike, or you can take a driverless car. Not going to happen anytime soon here. But at the same time, they're building these new bike paths all over the city, you know. So, but I'm just saying all that to say that we live with this illusion that we live in a free country, and we live with this illusion that the Democratic Party represents democracy to us, when in fact the democracy is fleeting and it has never been designed as such.
That's right.
That's why we have an electoral college.
That's right.
You know, all these people go out and vote, and then you have a small number of people who say, okay, well, we heard you, but we can exercise our ability to choose who we want.
That's right.
You know, if you go back a few years, the election was decided by the Supreme Court. It wasn't the will of the people. It was the will of 9 people or 6 people to decide who was going to be president. So we really have to be critical in the way we see things and not accept the narrative that we're given, because the narrative that we're given at all points has misinformation, disinformation, and information that is intended to take us away from the truth. They don't want us to know the truth. They don't want us to know who we are.
They don't.
We built this country, and we're begging them to give us back some of what they earned from our blood, sweat, and tears.
Here, let's just say the fact real quick. I'm sorry. Just interject real quick. You know, this is, like I said, this is crazy and mental, because again, you know, just a quick comment. They are comfortable. The powers that be are comfortable. You know, because we're not. I mean, our people, because I'm just speaking on Black folks. I don't know about anybody else, but our people can't even recognize historical breadcrumbs that they can put together and put a analytical thought together about something. You know, they today are showing you things like through movies in your face. In your face. Telling you what they doing, where they thinking, where they trying to go with this stuff, and we still do. Well, LeBron James hit 200 points last night, and all this old crazy stuff. So I think the powers that be are very comfortable with
Yes,
the masses of the
they
people.
sleep well.
You know,
They sleep well.
sleep, man. Come on, man.
They sleep well. No white person in America goes to sleep worrying about what black folks about to do. Nobody. Nobody.
Yeah, that's all. I just for point. So it's this the reset. This the reset that got to happen right here.
Yes,
This
sir.
reset.
Yes, sir.
But the only thing that gives me comfort a little bit, and I close. The only thing that gives me the willpower to keep trying and to do something is knowing historically it's never been the masses of the people.
Yes.
It's been always been a small group who made the decision for the masses. Because if we waiting for the masses, you can forget it. It ain't gonna happen. I got to go back to what my father used to say. It's gonna take an act from God to take the blindness off of black folks. And I'm surely believing that, because we ain't gonna do it as a group, as a mass on our own. So that's why I'm encouraging our conscious brothers to put some tangible together, like Brother Johnson is doing. Something that we can put our hands on and touch. We don't read some books now. Now they'll put some tangibles together with that, so to show our people what to do, how to do it. And that's what we need.
That was well said. You know what, brothers, as we reflect back on these 248 years since the Declaration of Independence, which actually they started signing it yesterday, August the 2nd, even though the declaration was July 4th. They approved it July 2nd. It was actually enacted July 4th, and then they read it on July 8th. But many of the signers weren't there at the time, so they didn't really start signing it till August the 2nd of 1776, 248 years ago. But here's what I wanted to say. The reason I'm bringing that up, and of course, 41 of those 56 signers were slave masters, by the way, right? But Kamala Harris said America is not a racist country. But anyway, I'm bringing it up to say this. One of the mistakes we made after slavery as a people that we can still correct now, the Native Americans, they ended up with a piece of America. They got some land. Black people settled for a place in America. We got citizenship. I want to make sure the folks is following me on this. The Native Americans got a piece of America. They got land. American Africans got a place in America. We got citizenship. What the Native Americans did that we should have done, that was make sure America deals with us as a special, unique group of people with its own history. And so that whenever you discuss us or talk with us or pass legislation, you do it for us alone, not with anybody else included. That's why they have a Bureau of Indian Affairs. Indians are dealt with alone. Don't get me wrong. They facing white supremacy too, but at least they get dealt with on their own terms. We get clumped in with people of color. We get clumped in with minorities. We get clumped in with disadvantaged Americans. One of the biggest mistakes we make is we should have settled like the Native Americans for a piece of America, not a place. They have used citizenship as a weapon against the American African people. And when you look at many of our Black organizations, the Nation of Islam, they advocate for what? Some states in America, right? What's the other Black organization? Black Socialist Organization, Republican New Africa. They advocate for a couple states in America. When you look at this, the fact that most of us believe that some land of our own would be on the pathway to our independence, if we would have just told the government from the beginning, treat us as a special, protected, unique group of people like you do with the Native Americans, we wouldn't have to worry about the Arabs and the East Indians and the Latinos and the homosexuals taking all of our civil rights gains and taking all of our resources and benefits, because they wouldn't be allowed to, because we would have a special protection. I think Black people need to go back to that drawing board. And I think one of the things that should be demanded of either candidate, in exchange for our vote, you're going to advocate that Black people are no longer to be included as people of color. They are no longer to be included as minorities. We will deal with Black people on their own terms, just like we do with the Native Americans. There will be an Office of American African Affairs. There will be an Office of African American Issues and Concerns with its own director, who is a cabinet level position within the president's cabinet. And for going forward, whenever we deal with Black folks, we deal with them by themselves. They're the only ones who were enslaved. They built this country a brick by hypocritical brick. It is not fair. It is not just for us to include them in with immigrants who only been here a few decades.
Come on. Yes, absolutely.
Well, you know, there's another thing that exists within the paradigm of America called sovereignty. And 99.9% of us have no idea what sovereignty means.
Yes, sir.
And we don't understand how citizenship can actually be injurious to us because it limits our ability to be free.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. So if you know the law, and we're talking about all kinds of law, common law, maritime law, when you know those things, then you understand that there are solutions to problems that can be enacted.
No. I'm trying to figure out how much LeBron's contract is going to be. You know what I'm saying? Is he going to get traded? Is he going to play with his son? And you know, that's why I don't want to know nothing about that.
Yep. And you know what? To this point, this is why the reparations issue is such a touchy issue, because you have two issues competing with each other. As you just said, Brother Vince, reparations are given to nations. They're not given to citizens. Citizens don't get reparations. Nations get reparations. America gave reparations to the Japanese during the internment camps. They were given reparations as a distinct population within the country. So, if we really want reparations as much as we say we do, are we willing to forego American citizenship in order to benefit from the laws of reparations, in order to benefit from the Geneva Convention, in order to sue America in world court for crimes against humanity? When you look at the definition of genocide, America is guilty of every single criteria of genocide laid forth in the United Nations. But guess what? We can't charge them with that because we are citizens. And the United Nations is clear. Citizens must seek justice through their own courts. You cannot go to international court for issues that you have as a citizen with your country. So to your point, we are limited through our so-called alleged, yet to be proven American citizenship. In order to get that reparations the way we want it, you may have to forego that American citizenship. But the problem with that, brothers, as you all know, even though you have more rights as a population in exile than you do as a citizen, the migrants have more human rights in America than we have as citizens in America. Now, although we know that, here's the problem. Black people are very insecure about their American citizenship. We are a psychologically homeless people. This is why we cling to that red, white, and blue flag. This is why we celebrate 4th of July. This is why we pledge allegiance. Black people are very insecure and anxious and neurotic about their Americanism. And in my opinion, I'm going to be honest with you, brothers, and you can tell me what you think. In my opinion, if Black people have to choose between being an American citizen and getting reparations, I believe most of us are going to side with the citizenship. I do not see the bulk of American Africans foregoing their American citizenship to get reparations. Our love for Caucasians, our desire to fit, our desire to be included, I do not believe we give all that up for reparations. I think we can. If we have to make a choice, I think Black America cancels the reparations and keep their red, white, and blue flag.
Well, my brother, there are a lot of us who have never been outside of our cities, our states, and the country. But I'm here to tell you that there are other places on this earth that you could exist in with those reparations.
Oh, yes.
and have a much better quality of life. There are other countries in this world that you could go to and look, and everywhere you see is Black people who love you.
Wow.
Who don't have an issue with you.
Wow. That
you
is
know,
heaven.
we drive these streets concerned, looking over our shoulder this way, that way, because there might be somebody that potentially could harm us, and it's somebody that has a uniform, a badge, and a gun.
Wow.
And that's a state of perpetual fear. Brother Hampton is a police officer, and he's been involved in workshops where he has to tell somebody what to do if somebody stops you.
Yes.
This is on the minds of our mothers who know that their sons are on these streets and have to face that. So all I'm saying is that America is not the only place on earth. And I know there are some who say, well, you know, we built this country, we deserve to have it, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. But I just happen to be, as you are, brother, both of us have been to the continent of Africa, and we see how we're capable of living. You know, we have an associate, Dr. Whitaker, who has a house on a beach in Camenda. He can walk down his backyard, put his feet in the sand.
Wow.
He can have somebody go up the coconut tree and get him a fresh coconut and drink fresh coconut water any day that he wants to do that. We can live like this if we choose to, or we can be stuck in thinking that America is the only place on the planet that we can exist successfully. That's the choice that we have, but it comes with an expansion of our consciousness and our awareness and our knowledge of who we are and what we're capable of.
Real quick, just a quick comment. What's criminal is this. What you kind of like what you just said, Vince, is, and that's the psychological psychosis that is going on, and that's what we're gonna have to break. Is people like Umar is gonna have to lead the way with that of understanding. Our people think on what we've been fed, on how this system is being ran right now, is the only way to do something. There's no other pedagogy or something that another way. Just like when we talked about the Japanese on how they don't take a test until the 4th grade, they teaching ethics and their culture and this. We think this is the only way to teach. You say you got to go to 4 years, 8 years to study an eyeball in order to get a degree. Who made that law? Who come up with that?
That's right.
We going by their standards of understanding everything, and it's criminals for us to think there's no other way to do anything but what's been shown in front of you. And that's the psychological piece. Once you get to say, well, we ain't got to do it like this. We can teach our kids like this. We can run our communities like this. So, and that's why I go back to what our ancestors already laid down. They don't give you the roadmap. We just been indoctrinated not to look that way. And our churches has helped in us turning our way from Africa.
Wow.
I want to be respectful of time, Brother Umar. We've had you for a couple of hours, and we definitely appreciate you spending this time with us. Before we conclude the broadcast, I just want to give you an opportunity to highlight or to promote anything that you're interested in promoting. And before you do that, I just want to ask everybody that's viewing us online, because we got about 45 folks online right now, do us a huge favor, like, comment, and subscribe. We've been getting some comments and I've been sharing them with you, but it would do us a great service if you could subscribe to our channels. And that way, when we have illustrious scholars like Dr. Johnson on with us, you'll be able to get a notification. You'll be able to view this content. We really, really appreciate your assistance with that. So with that, Brother Umar.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that, Brother Vince. This Tuesday, August the 6th, I'm asking all of my American African brothers and sisters to join me in Bunell, Florida, at the Kim C. Hammond Criminal Justice Center in Bunell, Florida, located at 1769 East Moody Boulevard. 8 a.m. in the morning will be the second sentencing hearing for 18-year-old Brendan Depper. This is the black boy from Palm Coast, Florida, who on the day Malcolm X was assassinated 2 years ago, was arrested after attacking a teacher's aide for taking his video game out of his hand. This 18-year-old brother, who was 17 at the time of the crime, was diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder, conduct disorder, autism, anxiety disorder, ADHD. He was taking about 5 or 6 serious psychiatric medications. He had an IEP that was not being followed. The IEP, the special ed contract, specifically stated to not take anything out of his hand or you could trigger his post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, the teacher aide didn't listen. She took the game out of his hand. He chased her out the classroom, threw her on the ground, punched her a few times. She's alive and well. She's perfectly fine. We saw her at the first hearing, but she says she doesn't care if he goes to jail and never come out. He can go to jail for 30 years, brothers and sisters. This black boy who was adopted by white parents, he never knew his own biological parents. His white foster parents took him and later adopted him. He's only known white people since he was a kid. They didn't do right by him, and now he can go to jail for 30 years. So I'm asking brothers and sisters around the country, fly on down to Jacksonville, Florida, drive 45 minutes to the Bunnell Courthouse at 1769 Moody Boulevard. We're going to be in there 8 o'clock in the morning so the judge and the prosecutor can see that this black boy, although he's being raised by white people, he has a black community that is behind him. And just to put this into comparative perspective, some of y'all remember the sister named A.J. Owens. Remember the black woman who was shot through the door by the old white woman in front of her kids when she went to reclaim her son's skates or iPad? That white woman is also in jail, and she can do 30 years. So somebody needs to explain to me how a child who punched a teacher's aide, who's alive and well, can go to jail for 30 years, the same amount of time as a white woman who shot and killed a mother in front of her children. That's what we're dealing with in Florida. And the state of Florida adjudicates more black youth as adults than any other state in America. So I've made it my personal business to do all that I can to try to help this brother get justice. The second point is we will be at Nat Turner Land August the 21st. If you've never been to the Nat Turner Land, please come on down with us. Baba Khalifa will be leading the tour in the celebration of the most revolutionary black leader in American history. That'll be in Nat Turner Land, Virginia, known as Druryville, Virginia. And if you want tickets to join us on August the 21st, please go to natturnerlibrary.com. I'm supposed to be in London, England, August the 11th, but the passport office is holding up my passport. I don't know why. The Department of State has not given me my renewed passport. I'm supposed to be in London on the 11th, and I'm supposed to keynote the Honorable Marcus Garvey's birthday celebration in Costa Rica, August 16th, 17th, and 18th, if I get my passport. If I don't get my passport, I'll probably fly to California and speak at the Garvey Day in Los Angeles. If anybody needs to reach me by phone, 215-989-9858. Don't call, only text me because the voicemail stays full. Again, that's 215-989-9858. Email address, Dr. Umar Johnson at yahoo.com. And don't forget today, right here at Eastern Michigan University, day 2 of the Black Consciousness Conference, we will be inside of the Honors College on Eastern Michigan University's campus in Ypsilanti, Michigan, today from 3 to 7. Absolutely free. You don't need no money. You don't need to register. Just pull on up.
All right. With that, thank you so much for joining us on 360 Info Network. We've had tremendous engagement from the audience. And again, don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe. We really appreciate that. As always, we'd like to thank you for joining us.
Great
know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, and make today your absolute best day. Peace.
Peace.